There was HRT, one size fits all. Now it's becoming this industry because it's become a popular topic. So an industry is springing up, and women just want their symptoms gone. And that's really kind of a dangerous thing. I mean, I actually call it hormone trafficking because where women's processes are becoming an industry where a lot of people are getting very rich off this industry. And women are using hormones that are very, very high dose that their bodies can't really absorb or process in a healthy, normal, safe way.
You're listening to the Plant-Based Diet Podcast, where we talk about all things plant-based. I'm Esther Garfin, the host of this show and founder of Alternative Food Network. Join me and my amazing array of guests who are a mix of healthcare professionals, industry executives, and people with an interesting story to tell about their plant-based journey. Let us help you with your journey wherever you're at to learn the what, why, and how to eat plant-based. You've hit your mid to later 30s, 40s, 50s, and above, and suddenly every headline says something different about your hormones. One article says you must start hormone therapy, another warns it's dangerous, and you're stuck in the middle, not sure who to trust. And without real clarity, you're left guessing about decisions that directly affect your energy, sleep, weight, and long-term health. In this episode, my goal is to get you clear, evidence-based answers on what actually works before, during, and after menopause. And by the way, since hormone balancing isn't just a female issue, I'm devoting 2 episodes to this topic. Today's focus is women, and part 2 is going to be men. I want you to be more confident in the doctor's office and navigate these phases in your life in, as my guest Dr. Kumar says, the most therapeutic, cost-effective, and safe way possible. And yes, Dr. Kumar is a proponent of a whole food plant-based diet as well, and she's going to be explaining why. Now, before we get into the conversation, a few things to share with you. First, Alternative Food Network is launching a new series in Spanish called Medicina Culinaria. It's hosted by Dr. Sabrina Falque, who also hosts Culinary Medicine Recipe in English. So now our small but mighty indie network has 3 series, which is quite exciting. Also, in an attempt to keep up with our production levels, Alternative Food Network, which also produces this show, Plant-Based Diet, has joined Buy Me a Coffee, which is a quick and easy way for our audience to support us. So if you're one of our many loyal audience members who's listened to Plant-Based Diet for a while and you appreciate the content we're bringing you, please consider supporting Alternative Food Network on Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Alternative Food Network. The link is also in the show notes, and it's just a couple of taps. Now, getting back to our guest on this episode, Dr. Rose Kumar is board certified in internal medicine. She was twice voted top doctor in internal medicine and top doctor in integrative medicine. She is a leading expert in bioidentical hormone balancing. Over the past 30 years, using precise and diligent scientific methodology, she has designed a safe and effective customized protocol for natural hormone balancing for her female and male patients. She's had over 70,000 patient visits in the last 24 years of leading the Omani Center, with the majority of her patients in need of hormone balancing. As always, I appreciate you sharing this episode with others who could benefit from this information. And if you haven't already followed this series on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, please do so. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you, Dr. Kumar. As you know, I saw you speak on a webinar with Michelle Stam, who is a former guest, and I knew I had to have you on this show. So, Michelle, if you're listening, thank you so much for making the connection. And Dr. Kumar, thank you so much for taking the time from your, what I'm sure is a very busy schedule, to be on this episode.
Thank you so much, Esther, for having me.
So we are going to deal with a very big topic today. And I feel like this topic is a powder keg of topics when we're talking about perimenopause and menopause. And, women don't know what to do. They don't know who to listen to. It's very confusing. And so what I'm hoping from this episode and from your words of wisdom, based on your many years of clinical experience is that women, they'll hear what we're talking about today, and when they go to their next visit with their healthcare professional, they will be a little bit more informed, a little bit less confused, and hopefully this will empower them for their next appointment. With that in mind, what's the minimum that you would want women to know about hormones in the perimenopause and menopause, postmenopause stages?
Well, really, when I was in medical school, we were never really educated thoroughly on women's hormones, or even men's hormones for that matter. And so not only was I not taught the nuts and bolts about, what women's cycles are, what premenopause, perimenopause, postmenopause is. This is back in the day, like 40 years ago. But there wasn't a whole lot of context for us to really understand women's health and the different needs of women at different stages of their life. There was HRT, one size fits all. Now it's becoming this industry because it's become a popular topic. So an industry is springing up, and women just want their symptoms gone. And that's really kind of a dangerous thing. I mean, I actually call it hormone trafficking, because where women's processes are becoming an industry where a lot of people are getting very rich off this industry, and women are using hormones that are very, very high dose, that their bodies can't really absorb or process in a healthy, normal, safe way. And so all the words that you use to introduce this podcast are words that are true to my heart and my vision for healthcare. Is we want to be educated, we want to know what questions to ask, we want to understand our bodies, we want to understand our processes, maybe not as an expert, but enough to know what's safe and what's not safe. So what the bare minimum from my perspective is, women should understand how their cycles work and what happens as they age, and why do women's bodies have a ovarian shutdown and a receptor downregulation, and what do we do to support our bodies during those processes, and how can we understand those without totally pathologizing them? So those are some of the things that I think are an important foundation for most women. And the good news is that we have a lot of information out there. The bad news is we have a lot of information out there. And women have to be able to sort through what's accurate and what's not, because unfortunately now opinions have taken over evidence. They've taken over science. And that's very scary for me to see. I've seen a lot of women that have come in on testosterone pellets, lots of high doses of bioidentical hormones, HRT, IUDs that are hormonal IUDs, and they're post-midlife, and they've had just disasters in their bodies, some life-threatening. So I think that it's really important for women to have a basic understanding so that they can differentiate and discern what's safe and what's not safe. So I'm really grateful that you have this.
Oh, there's so many questions. I barely know where to start. Okay, so I was actually surprised. I would have never thought that hormones, the hormones that we're talking about, start to already change in mid to later 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So can you walk us through what happens in premenopause and perimenopause?
Well, we come in with about 1 million to 2 million follicles when we come into the earth. A lot of those, like half of them, are gone by the time we're in puberty. And then after puberty, as we reach our late 30s, another huge amount of follicles are gone. And so what these follicles are, these are the parts of our ovary, the egg that survives, the follicle that survives and gets fertilized is a rare thing. It's like winning the lottery. But there's a lot of atresia of the follicles in the ovary to be able to create one follicle that can be fertilized so that a baby can be born. So as time goes on and the follicular numbers drop, our ovarian vitality and our ovarian reserves drop. So typically by the end of your 30s, now it's earlier because of all the corrupted foods and the hormone disruptors that are going into our body. Our ovarian reserves are much lower than they used to be 30, 40 years ago. So women are having issues with perimenopausal type symptoms in their late 30s. And in their mid 30s, they're starting to notice things like breast tenderness and, feeling kind of the PMDD, which is the dysphoria prior to their periods. And that's usually a sign that the hormones are out of balance. So by the time a woman is 38 to 40, they're at a different platform where the hormone imbalance is more significant. I know for me it was at 38 where I started to feel like this black hole would open up before my period, at 2 days before, and I was kind of overwhelmed because it was like this emotional black hole that I had to navigate, which is very hard to do. So, so at that point is when I started doing hormone balancing for myself. And it was like a miracle almost because as I transitioned into my 40s, it was much improved. But then I noticed I had to take a higher and higher dose as I progressed into my 50s. And so I became very interested in what women are going through and did tedious, very methodical study of my patients, of the literature that was out there, literature that was not out there, what is safe, what is not safe. There's no generalized way to prescribe hormones. It's all customized because every woman's body is different. So when women go on the internet and they want a testosterone pellet and it's one size fits all, you don't know how your body is going to process that versus your friends. So we can't really compare how hormones are going to be metabolized by our body versus somebody else's body. And this is what's so important for us to be able to gain insight into how our body works and how we feel on how much hormone. And that's why you need someone who's skilled and who is dedicated to customized hormone balancing versus replacement. There's a huge difference between the two.
So a woman shouldn't necessarily be researching or looking up in terms of who to go to someone who knows hormone replacement. It's
right.
Hormone balancing.
Mm-hmm. Makes a big difference. And hormone balancing is with bioidentical hormones that are molecularly matching the hormones that our body produces. And bioidentical hormones are derived from mostly wild yam, but if you eat wild yam, you're not going to get the hormones. The compounding pharmacists go through a procedure where the phytohormones, the plant-based hormones in the wild yam, are then converted into the same molecular structure as estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, for example, versus HRT, which is synthetic, hormone replacement therapy, which is synthetic, and you cannot balance with HRT. It is not set up for that. It's set up for replacement.
Now, BHRT versus HRT and FDA approval. So are bioidentical hormones FDA approved?
They're not, because they're not patented through the pharmaceutical industry. Okay. So FDA will only approve synthetic pharmaceuticals, that they don't approve nutraceuticals or anything compounded or anything natural.
So what would you tell if there is a physician listening or physicians listening? What would you tell them in response to their concern? Well, I'm not comfortable prescribing something to my patient that's not FDA approved.
So then send your patient to someone who is. So, because really over time, those of us that have done diligent work with hormone balancing have seen the clinical response. I've had about 70,000 patient visits in my practice over the last 25 years. that's a clinical study. That's way bigger than any study that even Women's Health Initiative was a 10,000 patient study. So I've seen over time and tweaked over time how women respond, how even I respond, because I've been taking these since I was 38 and I'll be 64. So, there is, in my practice, I have not seen harm from these hormones the way I've seen when I used to prescribe HRT. So it's really like, because we're using a minimum amount for maximal balance. I mean, this is not about replacement. This is really about enough to create balance, enough to create a therapeutic response without increasing the blood levels of estrogen, say in a postmenopausal woman beyond 20 and progesterone beyond 1 or 2. When a woman is menstrual, her estrogen is anywhere from 100 to 250, and progesterone is anywhere from like a tenth of that, so 20 to 30. After menopause, it's a big zero, or it should be. If it's not a zero after menopause, your liver is not really doing its job, neither is the microbiome, because they are supposed to deactivate and excrete estrogen. And if your estrogen is elevated and you're not on estrogen, then there's a problem with your liver or your biome. So, and that's where the lifestyle piece comes in, because this is not just, here's your hormone and have a nice day. This is, what do you need to eat? How do you need to shift your lifestyle? How do you need to stimulate the synchronization of your organs and your microbiome and your liver communication? That whole axis needs to be restored, because all of that changes after menopause and as a woman is approaching menopause.
Okay, I definitely want to get into the lifestyle and the food bit, but I first have some other questions about what you were talking about with BHRT. Are there studies that have been done with BHRT that people could perhaps look up if they want to satisfy themselves that this is perhaps the route they want to take?
The good news is that there are European studies that they can access, because we don't do studies on nutraceuticals or anything natural in our country.
Okay.
The books that are written, there's several references that you can access. One is a set of books by John Lee. That's years ago. That's where I got started. And it was fascinating and made a lot of sense, but some of the information that he put out there is outdated. Like, what he was talking about is checking salivary hormone levels. They're not as accurate. And so I do only serum levels, blood levels of hormones. That's really been something that I've tweaked, and I created a protocol that's been very safe for my patients. And it was based on my own clinical dedication to this area. Chris Northrup wrote a book back in the day, really great book, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, and the Wisdom of Menopause. A lot of what she referenced, some were studies, some were anecdotes. Again, this is a very unaddressed area that is unfortunate, because these hormones are life-saving for women. And even though they're not FDA approved, a lot of things that are FDA approved are harmful for our bodies.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that should be the standard, because a lot of physicians are using these and are having good results with them. So I think that, you have to really use the scientific method, a good amount of common sense, the data that is available, and your clinical experience with it.
And I know you were saying, obviously everyone is an individual and they have individual needs, requirements. Are there, again, I'm just thinking for general practitioners who have someone come into their office, maybe they're not referring out, I don't know, but are there minimum dosages, like any sort of standard to start with?
Well, what I do, and I can just speak for myself. So what I do is, when I say a patient comes in 38, 39, she's having, a lot more symptoms prior to her period. So what I typically do is check their blood levels in the luteal phase of their cycle, which is the second half of your cycle. So the first half of your cycle, of your menstrual cycle, is day 1 of your period through, on average, day 12 to 14. So that's the follicular phase of your cycle. You're not producing progesterone during that phase of your cycle. You're only producing estrogen. In the middle of your cycle, ovulation, ding, 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 that happens. And then that progesterone levels start rising. So it's during that phase where you're fertile, progesterone level increases, it kind of hangs out it peaks around the same place as estrogen peaks, or it should. That's balance. But if a woman is having symptoms, usually the estrogen to progesterone ratio is wider. It's not like a 1-to-1 ratio. It's not like if your estrogen is 100 and your progesterone is 3, that's a very high ratio of estrogen to progesterone. If your estrogen is 100 and your progesterone is, say, 20, that's a ratio of 5. If your estrogen is 100, your progesterone is 10, that's a ratio of 10. E to P ratio is 10. If the ratio is far greater than 10, that's typically a symptom. Women will have symptoms. And so checking their hormones around day 21 to 24 of a 28-day cycle, or about 7 days before their cycle is due, is a good rule of thumb to check that ratio between estrogen and progesterone. And then, depending upon what that ratio is, a good starting dose for progesterone, if the ratio is not that bad, not that horribly widened, is to start with 25 milligrams of progesterone, of bioidentical. The max that I go up to, and that's typically in a woman's late 40s, is about 200 of progesterone. A lot of women don't need that because as you reach your late 40s, your estrogen level starts dropping also. So then the ratio narrows a little bit. Yeah. And so you don't need that much progesterone. So really we're not treating the absolute level of progesterone. We're treating the ratio between estrogen and progesterone. So that is something that women can track or educate their physicians about, or physicians that are listening to this can kind of take note of that and see how their patients do when they try this. Because a lot of medicine is a practice, and we practice our craft. And this is a completely different milieu that we were not trained to do. I did it out of necessity because my patients were really suffering and they were getting progesterone off the shelf. And I didn't know what they were doing and whether that was safe or not. So I took it upon myself to go down the rabbit hole and study as much as I could of what was available and start really low and see what was happening. And if it was harming them or if they weren't doing well, I was going to be done. But what I found is just like this miraculous response.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was incredible for me to be able to help my patients have a better quality of life and actually reduce their risk of disease, because a lot of conditions are a result of estrogen dominance.
Speaking of symptoms of estrogen dominance,
Mhm.
what kinds of symptoms are you talking about that maybe a woman might be experiencing but she doesn't realize what's going on?
Right. There's a whole myriad of them. Memory issues, breast tenderness, weight gain, waistline increase, sleeplessness at night. Sometimes women with estrogen dominance will have like hot flashes. It doesn't make sense, but they will. Or they'll have more anxiety, they'll be more irritable. Like me, I had that black hole feeling where emotionally I was just dropping into an abyss. A lot of women do that right before their period. I would start having night sweats right before my period. So those are some of the symptoms. Other symptoms are heavy periods. So if your periods are super heavy, or your doctor said, oh, you're anemic, well, anemia is usually a result of very heavy periods. So when your periods are super heavy, you're not producing enough progesterone. And so what's happening is a lot of women are getting ablations or hysterectomies done because their periods are heavy,
Oh my gosh.
but it's really a hormonal imbalance.
Wow.
So it's really, I mean, this is such a critical issue that it's really important for women to understand this.
And sort of on the flip side of things, can you have no symptoms but still have hormone imbalance?
Yeah, you can. And that's women that are, say, plant-based, they, the plant-based diet will offset some of those symptoms. So like when I went into menopause, I think I had 2 hot flashes when everything stopped. I was plant-based. I was pretty vegan at the time. I'm not as vegan anymore, but I was very vegan at the time, very strict about my diet because my body was changing and my waistline was expanding. And I was going, oh, what is happening? I need to like really watch what I'm eating and eat really nutrition dense foods. And around the same time, I was getting my plant-based certification and really learning a lot about the effects of a plant-based diet on the body, and it all made sense. So a lot of my patients that are not having symptoms are on a plant-based diet, but I check their hormones anyways, because you can have estrogen dominance and it'll spring up stuff, but it's always a good idea to be balanced.
To clarify, because this is the plant-based diet
Yeah.
podcast, can the foods we eat help to balance hormones or help with the symptoms?
Yes,
Which one is it?
both.
Both.
So when you're young, like young, by young I mean 35 to 40, younger than me, young, you're some of the issues with hormone balance are coming from the way that your hormones are being metabolized in your body. So when there's a very slight variation or a slight estrogen dominance, a lot of times just changing your lifestyle will make a huge difference in your hormone ratios. And I've seen that in my patients over and over and like countless times, where they don't need hormones. They got off meat, they got off alcohol, they're eating a Mediterranean diet that's plant heavy, plant based. If they're gonna eat chicken or fish, it's very, very infrequently. It's more medicinal rather than as a source of protein. But adding tofu, soy to your diet, which is a phytoestrogen. So all of that so the liver will process estrogen, deactivate it when it's done with its use, send it into the gut, and the gut microbiome, if it's healthy, will eliminate it. If the gut microbiome is not healthy, it will reabsorb the estrogen that's been deactivated, and estrogen levels will go up and hormone imbalance will continue. I mean, it's really a fascinating mechanism. So that's why a plant-based diet
A whole food plant-based,
whole
right?
food plant-based
Yeah.
is really important to balance not just our female hormones or male hormones too, but all hormones in general. The endocrine system relies on the microbiome in the gut and the liver to keep things balanced, to keep things homeostatic so that our body can function as a system.
Wow, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
2 points about what you're just saying. One, and I've said this a couple times on different episodes, when we're talking about soy, we're talking about organic.
Organic
correct?
soy. Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because otherwise soy is a heavily sprayed
Yes.
crop, right?
It's heavily sprayed and it's heavily genetically modified. So 90% of soy in the US is genetically modified. And genetically modified soy does not behave like organic soy in the human body. Our body is organic. It's designed for organic food that's regenerative agriculture. It's got organic food has just a much greater nutrient density, and it doesn't have the residues, the pesticide residues, or the insecticides built into them, which is what the GMO foods have, that disrupt the microbiome and lodge in the fat as hormone disruptors, as these are endocrine disruptors. They're mimickers of estrogen. They're mimickers of hormones. So they occupy the receptors in our body, even at very, very teeny tiny, minute doses. They will occupy the receptors and block the binding of your own hormones on those receptors. So it disrupts the endocrine system's function. And if one system is not working well, no system is going to work well. I mean, our bodies are like this biomachine that has 5 gears. And if one gear isn't working, the rest of them aren't going to work. So I kind of see those pesticides and those hormone disruptors like as dirt in the machine. They just like if you take a bucket of sand and throw it in your car engine, it's not going to run well. It's the same with your body. And so the body gets disorganized and uncoordinated. And then our symptoms and a lot of the health issues in our country that we have now are a result of the way we eat and what we eat.
Okay, so in terms of what we eat, in addition to organic soy, what other fruits, we talked about whole food, plant-based, but are there particular fruits and vegetables that we should be focusing on?
So we really want high fiber, low glycemic index fruits and vegetables. So we're talking about dark leafy greens, plants that have insoluble fiber. And lentils and beans. I mean, lentils and beans, they're complex carbohydrates. They are loaded with fiber and protein. They're a complete food. So when you eat those insoluble fiber foods, that actually helps your microbiome. Your microbiome lives off of insoluble fiber. So that's food for your microbiome. And there's one particular organism called Faecalibacter presnitzii, which is a sort of the kitchen mother of your biome. So Faecalibacter presnitzii chews up that insoluble fiber and it feeds the rest of your gut, that fiber. And then all the other organisms in the gut, including ones that produce GLP-1, they get happy. So they start doing their job. Okay. And so when people eat a low fiber diet and are not eating organic and have ultra processed foods and lots of sugar, the microbiome, which is ultra sensitive, it just gets dysregulated and disorganized, and good organisms die off. And what we really want is these organisms that regulate our hormones, that are 90% supporting our nervous system because they produce nearly all of our neurotransmitters, and 90% of our immune system depends on the microbiome's health. So 90% of it exists in the lymphoid tissue in the intestinal lining. And so when we don't honor that, when we don't feed that, we land into the troubles that we're landing into in the US. So no amount of like high dose hormones or HRT or anything, that's not going to it's going to be helpful symptomatically, but it's going to end up causing a lot more trouble if your gut and liver are not functioning well because you're not feeding it the foods that it needs.
So then, in addition, so you mentioned whole food, plant-based, soy. I'm just repeating it for the benefit of listeners. Sure. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Nuts, seeds, lentils, beans. I have read also about cruciferous vegetables.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Those are loaded with insoluble fiber. Like when you're eating broccoli, like a cruciferous vegetable, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, they have fabulous antioxidants, but they also are like the stalk of broccoli. It's insoluble fiber. So don't throw it away.
Right.
Peel it, chop it up, and throw it in your stir fry or in your soup or whatever it is that you're eating it with. What I tell my patients, though, is try not to eat those vegetables raw because they're hard to digest. If you flash steam them or you stir fry them, like kale and collards and broccoli, they will get really vibrant green. That's when you know the cell walls are broken and all the nutrients have been mobilized. So it's really much easier for your body to incorporate those nutrients. And then the insoluble fiber, when you chew it up and it goes into your gut, it's feeding that mother hen in there that's creating short-chain fatty acids from the insoluble fiber and feeding the rest of the biome. So it's just cruciferous vegetables are sort of this must. I mean, the array of vegetables available is so great. We don't want to just eat iceberg lettuce because there's no nutritional value there. Some of my patients will say, "Oh, you're taking away all my meat. What am I going to eat?" Well, am I going to eat grass?
Well, then they should listen to this show because we
They're
help
going
you
to
with
eat.
that.
I mean, it's the amount of vegetables is unlimited.
Yeah.
But just make sure they're organic. So you're not getting the pesticide residues and the genetically modified stuff in your gut.
That's wonderful information on the food side of things. What you were saying, you can't just take HRT, BHRT, and go on your merry way. There are other lifestyle components, which I'm assuming exercise is helpful in all of this. I mean, all those things, be it the hormones, the food, the whole food plant-based diet, exercise, all good for the increasing waistline that a lot of people are complaining about, right?
Exactly.
So when it comes to testing hormones, I want to circle back to that one because that's another massive issue. And this is a personal anecdote, which originally when I invited you on the show, I'd forgotten about this. And then I was looking at some old notes and I found this letter, and I'm not going to read the whole letter. I'm just going to read one sentence. It was a letter from a gynecologist that was sent to my doctor because several years ago, I wanted to get my hormone levels tested just to know where I was at. I figured I should probably start to get to know what's happening in my body, right? So I want to read you one line from this letter. From the gynecologist to my doctor. There is zero value, again, zero value in using hormone values to manage symptoms in a woman with regular cycles or in menopause, and I will not be ordering them.
Okay, well, this is what walks into my office. Women with those kinds of negations.
Okay, so what do you recommend when they go into the doctor's office and they say, I want to get my hormones tested? What should they be getting tested? And does that vary if you're, let's say, late 30s, 40s, 50s?
No, well, it's pretty similar. I mean, what I usually do in a younger woman is check their estradiol, their progesterone, their DHEA sulfate, and a free and total testosterone. If their hormones are irregular, I also check a follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. And if they're trying to get pregnant and they can't get pregnant, I usually check an anti-Müllerian hormone. So that gives me their ovarian reserves. And so that's sort of the platform. Now, if DHEA comes back normal, free total testosterone comes back normal, because a lot of times those are like the last ones to go. The estrogen and progesterone are balanced, we're fine for a while. And I'd let them know, you know what, if you're having symptoms, if you feel like something's different a week before your period, we'll check it again and we'll see if things are changing. So that's usually, for a 38-year-old, that's like a yearly check, unless they're starting to feel different. If they feel different, I'm on it. So I'll check the levels and, help them with balancing. In your 40s, you're guaranteed to have, it's a very rare woman who doesn't have hormone imbalance. And that's a fortunate woman, or it's a very healthy woman who's eating a whole food plant-based diet. But if in 40s, as your 40s progress, the estrogen and progesterone are the main two, and as a woman reaches her like 45 and beyond, I'll periodically check an FSH to see if the ovaries are starting to wind down. And that kind of gives us a sense of where she is in the perimenopausal process. So the estradiol and progesterone are the two main ones to check. As women get older, like 50s and 60s, the DHEA becomes a more significant factor. The DHEA is an adrenal hormone, and that hormone over time, so when you're young, your DHEA is really high. It's like a regenerative hormone. It's like what's called the aging hormone. So DHEA, as we age, the DHEA levels decline. But if they decline too rapidly, like women that, like myself, who have gone through like a very, very stressful midlife and beyond, I went through a divorce and all of the trauma of a lot of things. My DHEA was like fumes when I was in my 50s. I was having memory issues. I could not, like my short-term memory was shot, and I was getting very scared that I was maybe developing early dementia. But my DHEA was so low, and so I checked the DHEA level, which what should have been 120 was at 23. So I supplemented with DHEA, not over the counter, but from a compounding pharmacy, and within a week, my memory came back.
Wow.
It was so significantly life-altering for me. It was like, oh my God, my patients that are complaining of this I must check that. I must stay diligent with this. So, to the gynecologist that said there's zero value, I would 100% disagree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that, again, if you're a physician your wheelhouse is hormones and you're dedicated like I am, by all means find a physician like myself or others that are also dedicated to check those levels so that you can track with your physician, how to balance and how to stay aligned with the process of premenopause.
And when someone is in perimenopause or menopause, postmenopause, how often should they be checking the
So
levels?
when I have say a postmenopausal woman come in and she's like not doing well, she's depressed, she's not sleeping well, she all those things, feels very stressed, feels very agitated, is gaining weight. I check her estradiol progesterone level, not progesterone because nobody postmenopausal has a progesterone level because the ovaries are done.
Yeah.
Estrogen level, DHEA, free and total testosterone, and if their estrogen is high, by high I mean 20, 25, 50, that's a problem. So then I look at their herbal supplements that they're taking. If they're taking any herbal supplements that are estrogenic, like maitake mushrooms can stimulate estrogen production. Ashwagandha can if you're taking too much of it. So there are, and it's too much to discuss in this podcast, but I'll have them do, say, a liver cleanse and then get off alcohol, go plant-based, whole food plant-based, and then I'll check their level again, like a month later. Invariably it drops. And so once it's low, then you can start doing the balance. Then I can start adding progesterone to bring their level up to like 1 or 2. And I typically will check the level 2 months after I start progesterone. And then if they feel well, then 3 months later, I'll check it again, make sure it's stable. If everything's good, all is good, in 6 months, I'll check it. So, but at first, you have to be more diligent because you don't know how her body is going to process the hormone, and you don't want to give too much or have some women, they don't metabolize progesterone well, and it converts into estrogen. They cannot be on progesterone. So, or at least at that point. So there's so many different factors. That's why the customized approach is the best.
And with someone who's post-menopause, and by the way, menopause is the day that's 12 months after your last period, right? It's
Right.
like one day.
By
Right.
definition.
So by definition, so post-menopause, would someone, if let's say you have a patient, you've prescribed BHRT, are they on that for the rest of their life?
So it's again hormone balancing, but it depends. So some of my patients, I mean, again, that's customized. So they can be. And what I'll do is like after 3, 4 years, if the patient says, I want to see how I feel off this, get off it, see how you feel. If you want to get back on it, if you don't feel as sharp, we'll get back on it. But, again, you have to be the pilot of your own journey. And if your inner intuition says, I want to see what happens when I stop it, by all means. So, I mean, again, we can't say it's for your whole life for everybody. For
Right.
some women it is, for others it isn't. So,
Okay.
customized.
I know that we've reached the end of your time, but just on that point, in terms of how long, do you advocate for BHRT not just for symptom relief, but for prevention
Prevention,
of
yes.
some, like cardiovascular, bone health, all that?
So, for example, if I'll have a woman whose bone density is really reduced. Now, the bone density issue is not just a hormonal issue, it's a food issue. So, women that eat a lot of meat are going to have a more accelerated bone loss because the acidic pH that animal protein creates in the body triggers parathyroid hormone production because the heart and the brain cannot function in an acidic pH. And so that stimulates parathyroid production. The parathyroid hormone mobilizes calcium out of the bones to neutralize the pH. If you're on a whole food plant-based diet, that's more alkaline. You're not going to need the parathyroid hormone to dissolve your bones in order to neutralize your pH. And so for women that come in, they've got osteoporosis early or they have osteopenia and it's accelerating, I'll put them on a whole food plant-based diet. And if they're not on hormones, the hormone that actually causes bone growth, bone density improvement, is progesterone, the bioidentical progesterone, and testosterone if the testosterone is low. So if the free testosterone is low, I'll put them on progesterone and free testosterone and then check their levels, have them do weight-bearing exercises, put them on my, bone health regimen, and then we'll retest the bone density in a year or 2 years, depending upon what their insurance will pay. And 9 out of 10 times, it's improved. So, so hormones are not like the primary cause of bone loss. It's the primary cause really is the lifestyle, the standard American diet that's heavy in meat and less fiber. But also remember your microbiome is the organ that absorbs calcium from your food. So if your microbiome is not healthy, you're not going to absorb the calcium that you should be absorbing because that is your nutrient absorber. So we want to keep that kitchen mother fed.
Right.
That insoluble fiber and the array of the rainbow in our plant-based, whole food plant-based diet. So that's really how I do it. Some women are intolerant of progesterone that have bone loss. They can't do it. So, so it's everything except the hormones then. Because the hormones play a role, but not as big of a role as people assign them. What I would say, my observation, not anything I've read, is that your lifestyle catches up with you, and it really catches up with you when your hormones leave. Because you don't have the reserves or the buffer to bounce back as fast. So you'll feel the effects of decades of not a great lifestyle after the hormones leave. So the hormones can't restore that. You have to change your lifestyle.
Interesting. All right. I know that people want to find you and talk to you. So please tell our audience where they can find you, and if they want to make an appointment with you. Do you work virtually across the states?
My website is www.omanicenter.com, OMMANI center.com. The number here is 262-695-5311. So you can call to schedule an appointment or go to the website, and there's a message board there where you can send a message for an appointment. I see women and men all over the country. I do telehealth, I do, phone consults, I do second opinions, I do complex medical issues, I do autoimmune disease, I do functional medicine. I mean, the list is limitless. I've been in practice for over 30 years, and I'm patient-centered and very customized in my approach. So I have a lot of patients with thyroid imbalances and thyroid issues. So that's sort of become a wheelhouse also for me.
And you also wrote a book, correct?
Yes, the book is called Becoming Real, Reclaiming Your Health in Midlife. You can go to my website and click on bookstore and order it. The Kindle is more user-friendly at this point. I'm not publishing the paperback through Amazon anymore, but the Kindle is on Amazon, so please feel free to download it. It's $9.99.
If someone is listening who's outside of the US, is there a way to benefit from your expertise or no?
Well, I do consults outside the US, but I can't prescribe. So it's more of an educational, and then they can talk to their physicians in their country and see where they get with that. But I have many patients in Mexico. I have some in Portugal. I have a few in the United Kingdom that just want to touch base to get information. And so
do you actually look at their blood test results, or
I do. And I can kind of like explain it to them. It's more educational, but I'm not really managing their health because I can't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, this was wonderful. Thank you so much on behalf of myself and the listeners.
Yeah, thank you.
This really was a wonderful episode. And for those listening who have men in their life who might be having hormonal imbalance as well, we will be doing a follow-up episode with Dr. Kumar regarding male hormonal imbalance. That will be the next episode on plant-based diet. And until then, until we meet again, Dr. Kumar, again, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Esther, for having me.
I hope you found this episode helpful. I know I did. Please share, rate, leave a review, and follow Plant-Based Diet on your favorite podcast listening platform. If you're on social media, please follow us at Alternative Food Network on Instagram, and we're also on LinkedIn. We also publish a monthly newsletter that includes plant-based recipes, recipe videos, our latest podcasts, and the occasional giveaway. You can sign up by going on our website, alternativefoodnetwork.com, and click the newsletter sign up button. And please consider supporting us on Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/alternativefoodnetwork. Until next time, thanks for listening. All content provided or opinions expressed in this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice. Please seek advice from your doctor or other qualified healthcare practitioner.